This session of Reef Therapy, we're going to talk about something that could be a hot button issue.
Yeah, it might go into the get off my lawn zone.
It might, but I haven't had any coffee today. I only had tea, so I'm not quite as spirited as I might normally be. But I still think there's a lot of important things to say.
Yeah.
About the value versus cost and pricing of aquarium corals.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do a proper intro. I'm Jake Adams. You are listening to Reef Therapy, and I am joined by
Mark Vanderwall.
Mark Vanderwall. Mark, you want to start it off on what you think about the value of corals, the cost of corals? Where do you want to kind of broach this topic?
Yeah. So one of the deep thoughts I had about this was 20 years ago, and I'm not going to go into like price comparisons and things were cheaper back in the day, but what I find interesting is, and maybe you have more insight into this because you've been in that side of the business, but there was a time where being a coral farmer, and when I say a coral farmer, I don't mean somebody out, in Indonesia farming corals, but like somebody that's propagating corals stateside.
Mm-hmm.
There was a general consensus 20-ish years ago that there wasn't a lot of money to be had in being like a coral farmer.
I vaguely remember that.
And stores would even emphasize that the corals and the fish were just the vector to get people to set up tanks, and the real sales were in the hardware and also in the maintenance, right?
Yeah.
And so coral propagation was not a big money business back then, and I think that also lended itself more to people being more up for trading. And now, I mean, I got nothing against people making money and running a business and being successful at it, but now you see coral farmers driving, German cars and living pretty good, which is a good thing, but it's just an interesting shift that's happened, and I think part of that is in the valuation of corals, but I also kind of wonder if you're growing corals and fragging them and you've got your own mother colonies that you're propagating from, that's a very takes time, right? You got to grow them out. You got to use a lot of chemicals, not chemicals, but additives, calcium. Got to keep your alk up. You got to burn through a lot of electricity to grow those frags. But now what you're seeing is, I wonder, and maybe this is jumping in too deep in the beginning, but now with the predominance of a lot of chop shops, where they're bringing in mariculture colonies and fragging them into smaller saleable items, you don't have to grow that thing out for a year and build up your frag base to sell, so you can make a quicker buck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is a fundamental shift in the way things were, let's say 20 years ago compared to today.
Definitely, like right around the turn of the century, the community was smaller, and we kind of knew all the players. Like there wasn't that many people propagating corals,
right? And
the community definitely had a agreed upon taboo against chop shopping or hacking and packing. This is different from cut to order frags from like your mother colony or something.
Sure.
But definitely chop shopping was generally frowned upon. And now people don't even ask. They don't even ask. Obviously, there's some strains that are not coming from the wild.
Sure.
And I also used to be completely, like just hardline anti-chop shopping, because over time you did see that, like, say, a really nice colony of at the time, let's just say, like, a really sensational chalice coral came in, and it would be cut up, and a lot of those frags would die, but enough of them would live. And I'm coming on the fence, but I feel like an even blend of cutting pieces and actually growing pieces, because even if they're fresh cut, if you get them to encrust and color up and sprout up, that's like 50% grown out. But before we move any further, I really want to make it super clear that Mark and I, we do not we don't judge anybody and
No,
on how
it's,
they run their business.
like I said.
You have to make your money where you can. Corals are, you can grow a coral out for 2 years, and right when it's sellable size, it'll just slough off on you, or just completely die, or RTN. And so you have to make your money where you can. So I'm not trying to. I'm not going to, I guess, shame any individuals on how they do things, but maybe we can shame the practices and some of the techniques, or at least. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say, for me, the act of like taking a mariculture or wild colony and chopping up and selling frags, I actually don't have anything against it, because then that single coral is essentially ending up in multiple tanks, and that's kind of a cool idea. And I can also see it in the sense of, if the mother colony is something that's relatively expensive, getting a frag of it makes it more accessible. But the question I have is, when the frags start to end up in the multiple hundreds of dollars, and I sort the vendor's page by alphabetic name, and I can see all the pieces, and I could essentially in my brain puzzle them back together.
Oh no.
You know what I'm saying? But then I start to think, well, so then what is the value of the mother colony if you look at the price of each frag, and then how does that correlate to the value of the wholesale price? And so to me, that's just a question I have. It's not a judgment. Because like I said, if I could make money, if I could be in the coral business, it'd be a lot of fun, right? Like, it's a fun job, it's a passion. So
it'd be some stress, but
yeah.
I think we need to take a step back and try to compare coral selling, coral propagating, coral harvesting to other industries.
Sure.
And one of the reasons that coral prices are all over the map is that the closest thing that I can compare them to would be like produce, right? And on some level, you have various grades, right? Grade A, grade AA, AAA, and then you have grades list. And we're talking about fruit. Certain types of fruit are not good enough to sell on their own, and so they might be processed and used in as an ingredient or as a filler for a pie. Just saying. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have like choice fruits that will go for crazy money in Japan, where they have an industry that is suited to grading every kind of fruit. But because our corals don't come from a factory, so they're not cookie cutter, and because when they come from either the ocean or a coral propagator, however they make their corals, the condition of the corals is all over the place, and corals are still new and not uniquely identified, and in different regions, like certain corals might be quite rare, let's just say in one part of the US, Southeast Florida, versus like the Midwest versus the West Coast. And so something might be locally scarce and hard to get, but on a wider, when you on a global view, it's the scarcity and demand is just all over the map. And I think that's what's a part of what leads to these crazy prices all over the place.
So real quick, to jump back to the previous topic, I'll just say, if we were to time travel back to 2000 and it was not as lucrative to grow and farm and sell corals, the end result was we had a lot less selection, right? We had a lot less options. So I would argue today, I think the fact that it is a profitable business for many folks is a good thing, because we have a lot more variety of vendors, and that's a good thing, right?
Right.
But I agree with you on that, on your point as well, in the sense that there's not really a standard around rarity, right? Like, there's not, and you even see it like a specific. There's a coral that I had and I lost during the move because I think I mistook it for like a piece of rubble.
Oops.
Yeah, oops. And then I was like, wait, whatever happened to that? And then I was going to buy another frag of it, and the price range varied significantly from vendor to vendor. Just a typical jack-o'-lantern Leptoceras, right?
Okay.
So I would see them for $39, and I would see them for $99, right?
Yeah.
Depending, and it also depended on the size of the frag, of course. But it was just interesting that it something like that could be all over the place, right? And I would imagine in certain areas, a lot of people have it in their tanks, and in other areas, people don't have a lot of it in their local kind of sourced areas, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, how rarity is graded, to your point, like the fruit analogy, I don't see much of a standard around that.
No, not at all. And there's definitely a hype factor and a FOMO factor, right? That fear of missing out. And you can create artificial hype by coming up with a silly name and trying to convince someone or that it's rare or scarce or it's really one of a kind. Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's really kind of mind-boggling when you go to certain vendors who have a lot of selection of, let's just say, whole colonies and maybe less frags. Every description is ultra rare, scarce, one of a kind, retina bleeding, and then the next description is something exactly along those lines. And like most of the corals on there will have that same description. And yeah, the thing about the reef shows is that I feel like that really plays on FOMO because I feel it, right? You know that you're in a location and in a short window of time where a bunch of people are coming through and they're all looking for coral, they're all for shopping for coral, and you could make the rounds and go see, what someone else is pricing a coral at, but by the time you come back, maybe that one colony will be gone, or that one exact frag you want will be gone. And man, I've just taken a long-term approach to, man, I'm gonna get that coral when I find it at a reasonable size and a price that I can live with. So some great examples for me is I think I might have mentioned this before, but my Miami Chalice, first frag sold for like over $1,000. I picked up like a 3-inch diameter colony, I think last year for $200. But it was a colony, it was like this freaking big. And because it wasn't in the hype anymore, nobody wanted it. I mean, it's got pretty nice color, but it doesn't, really make you say, oh, what is that? What is that coral? So yeah, the pricing is all over the map.